day 4 of VBS. I'm sure you guys are excited for your story session today. So let's get right into it.
Hey kids, welcome back. Fist bump. Come on, up everybody. Come on, fist bump. Good to have you back. Did you bring a friend with you? I'm so glad. It's day 4 and by now you would have made friends, you've gotten to know your teachers, your group captain and the stories as well. I hope you're having fun. It's been so much fun for me to teach these stories. Let's dive in. Are you ready? Are you ready? Say yay! All right, let's go. Today is day 4 and in this lesson we will learn about Jacob and his 12 sons. Jacob and his 12 sons. We're in the book of Genesis, and Genesis means the beginning. By now, you should have picked up the events, how they unfold, and every generation we've been talking about. We talked about Adam and Eve, then we talked about Cain and Abel, their children, then we talked about Noah and his family, and then after a little while comes Abraham and Sarah, and God made a promise to Abraham and Sarah, and he said, I'm going to take you to a new place, and I'm going to make you a great nation, and you're going to have hundreds and thousands of children, and I'm going to bless you. And Abraham was like, how is that possible when I don't even have one child? Then they try a stunt and try and have somebody else have a child for them. That didn't work out. Then finally God gives you the promised child, and then God says, can you please take this child's life? And God tests his faith. But Abraham came through, and you remember that story? And Abraham came through and God saved Isaac. Then there's Isaac. He married Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac has 2 boys, 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was the one with the birthright, but Jacob wanted the birthright, and he tricked Esau into giving him the birthright, and he got the blessing. And because of that, he had to run for his life. You got it? You got it? Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah and the family, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and then Esau and Jacob. But once you come to Jacob, now things begin to settle, because out of Jacob, you're not looking at every generation. You're looking at a new nation that's going to come out of Jacob. Can you imagine an entire nation out of one man? So you must have been picking up like a family tree. Grandpa, dad, son, grandson. You get what I'm saying? So as this family tree unfolds, these 3 generations you've really got to remember. You promise me you'll remember them? Okay, which are the 3 generations? Abraham, say Abraham, yeah. Isaac, say Isaac, yeah. And Jacob, not Esau, Jacob. Okay, together again. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These 3 names are going to be very important to this lineage, to this flow of the family tree. Everybody from that point is going to say, we are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We are the children of Abraham, Isaac, and we worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you know what was common between these 3? They all worship the same God. In fact, God is known as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isn't that amazing? We're not just the children of this God, but he is the God of these people, all because they trusted and they showed faith. Interestingly, if you remember, God changed Abraham's name from Abram to Abraham, and God changed Jacob's name, and Isaac, he didn't change his name. So that's an interesting thing that you'll pick up as you read the scriptures. Now, what I really hope is that I can tell you a little bit of everything that's going on, but sometime you should go to your children's Bible and you should tell your mom and you should tell your dad, Mom, Dad, read these stories to me. I want to know the whole story. I want to know every detail. I want to know where they were born, what they did. I want to know all the names. Become somebody who knows the book of Genesis from beginning to end, okay? So, for now, Abraham, Isaac, and not McDonald's, Jacob. Why McDonald's? Okay, and what's the common thing among them? God. They worship God. Were these guys good guys? Were they righteous people? Better than others? Holy, maybe? No. Adam was perfect for a little period of time, and then he fell. because he ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So now he had the option of doing evil. And everybody born out of Adam was born with the option to do evil. So he might have been perfect for a brief time, but after that, nobody was perfect. They couldn't be. They couldn't be perfect because there was a curse. Do you remember that? God had cursed Adam and Eve and Satan, and God had sent them out of the east. So they couldn't be perfect until the Son. Remember the seed, the snake crusher, until the Son came to crush the snake and remove the curse. And as the story unfolds, the Son's coming, the Son will rise. Now, because of God's patience, people kept on sinning and they kept on doing wrong. But God is a faithful God. God is a forgiving God, and he kept patient, and he will keep his promise until the right time. Thanks be to God. We praise God. Every Sunday we gather and we worship and we thank God that he's a promise-keeping God. But trickery and cheating continued. And finally, you know what? Jacob, the guy who tricked his own brother, was himself tricked. And he got tricked into marrying the wrong person. And eventually he married the person he wanted to marry. Now he's got 2 wives. And because of the 2 wives and through the 2 wives, he had 12 children. And all those children then became the nation that we know to be the nation of Israel. The 12 tribes of Israel. As all other stories, the story of Jacob is fascinating. You should read it. You should read the whole thing. It's in Genesis chapter 28. Okay, promise me you'll do that. One of Jacob's sons was a man called Judah. Say Judah. Judah means praise. One of Jacob's sons was a man named Judah. Was he a good guy? Not at all. He was as crooked as the rest of them. But Judah had a very special promise by Jacob, his father. He had given him a very special promise about his future. Not that Judah was a very special son, not that he had anything great about him or he was a good guy, but you'll find the word Judah appear over and over and over in the Bible. So what are the names you remember so far? Let's go with it. Adam and Eve, okay? Cain and Abel, come on, say it. Isaac and Rebekah, Abraham and Sarah, anybody else? Esau and Jacob. Jacob had 2 wives with 12 children, and these 12 boys became the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of them was called, Judah. One of them was called Judah. Now I want to tell you an interesting thing that happened to Jacob. This was about the time his name got changed. Very important. So Jacob was sleeping, and in his dream, he was wrestling with God. He was wrestling with God. And the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 32 that this wrestling kept on going until Jacob was wrestling down God, and God broke his hip and God pinned him to the ground until Jacob submitted to God. And when Jacob submitted to God, he was now ready for blessing. He was now ready to receive his new name, and with his new name would come new blessing. His name was Jacob, which meant deceiver, but God gave him a new name. His name was now Israel. Israel. And the last 2 letters of the word Israel is El, which comes from the name of God, Elohim, and God was now in covenant with Israel. He was now going to be a new man, not a deceiver anymore, and he would be the father of the nation of Israel. Later, when you talk about the nation of Israel, we're basically talking about everybody who came out of Jacob, whose name was turned to Israel. He was the father of the nation of Israel. Let's go to the next interesting story. So you have 12 boys, right? One of them is Judah, correct? Okay, we've got it so far. Jacob's family was living in a land called Canaan because Abraham had been promised that land and God had led Abraham. So he took the Shatabdi, he took the Rajdhani, and he got there with all his families and his cows and his buffaloes and everything. He got there and he reached there and he settled down and he was having a great time. Life was good. But then he had his children, and one of his boys was named Joseph. And Jacob didn't love all of his boys equally. That was a terrible thing. He loved Joseph so much. I don't know, maybe he was very cute, maybe he was his favorite, but he loved Joseph more than all the other boys. And don't you just hate that when mommy takes a favorite or dad takes a favorite? I just hate it. I didn't have so much of a problem because I was my father and mother's favorite, but the others had a real rough time. But anyway, Jacob's family was a difficult family and a broken family because his son Joseph, whom he really loved and was favored above all the others, created a little bit of a fight in the family. And all the boys got a little jealous. They got a little jealous of this fellow called Joseph. I'm sure you heard the story about Joseph and the Technicolor coat. Yeah. His father loved him so much that he took him to Shopper Stop and bought him the most beautiful multicolored coat. Out of all the 12 boys, one guy going around with this incredible jacket that just looked so cool, and everybody else was dressed in paper bags. What would they feel like? That's terrible. I don't know what that poor fellow was thinking, but Joseph had a Technicolor coat. From that point in time, you know the story, all the other guys said, you know what? We got to get rid of this fellow. He may be our brother, but as long as he's around, our dad is never going to love us the same. We need to get rid of him. If we get rid of him, maybe our father will love us the same as he loved him.
The Bible tells us the story in Genesis chapter 37. One day, they saw Joseph coming toward them while they were in the field. Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him. Then we will see what comes of his dreams. But Reuben and Judah were in a slight way better than the rest of the brothers. So they changed the plan. Instead of killing Joseph, they said, let's throw him in the well, and then let's sell him as a slave. So as Joseph came to them, they stripped him of his robe, threw him into the well. Then they saw a caravan approaching, and they sold him as a slave.
And Joseph was taken away by these guys, and they thought, the brothers thought, we're never going to see these guys again. But you know what? Just like you and just like me, God has a plan for our lives. And God has an incredible way of making the worst things turn around to become the best things. God makes the worst things in our life become the best things in our life. For Joseph, it was a hard time at that point, but Joseph believed in his heart, you know what? Whatever I'm going through, God's going to make it good for everybody. So here's what happened. Joseph was taken away to a land called Egypt. To a land called Egypt. And the king of Egypt is called Pharaoh. That's right. And he became second in command to Pharaoh. He became huge. He became big. He became like Prime Minister of Egypt. Can you imagine? 1 minute he's in a Technicolor coat back home and his brothers are jealous of him. And he had these dreams about who he would become. And he never gave up on those dreams, so much so that it irritated his brothers. And in his dreams, he always saw himself as someone whom God would elevate and even his brothers would bow to. Ha! Could that ever come true? And then Joseph was sold into slavery. He reaches Egypt. He becomes second in command. And then something happened. A big famine hit the land. Do you know what a famine is? A famine is when there's no more burgers anywhere. No food. No kebabs. All the shops are shut down, like lockdown. And there's no food anywhere. And all you have is just grass. And now the nation is worried. The family is worried. Where do we go? Where do we go? And then they heard on the news on India Today, they heard on the news that in Egypt there's lots of food. How is one nation having so much food? Because they had a smart prime minister. Guess who the prime minister was? Joseph! That guy had saved up because he believed in his dreams, and now Egypt had enough food for themselves and for everybody else. And these guys landed up saying, let's go shopping to Egypt to get food. When they went to Egypt to get food, they had to kneel before the prime minister to ask him for food. And now you got 11 brothers kneeling before Joseph, who is now the prime minister and in a position to help his own family get food. Isn't that insane? That's funny how God turns it around. Sometimes you think your friends make fun of you on the playground. Sometimes you think your friends make fun of you in class. And some people put you down and call you names. But when God has a plan for your life, you might end up on top. So you better be careful and you better be sure that the God you worship is the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, and the God of Isaac. All right. So that's the story of what happened to Jacob, who became Israel, who had a son called Joseph, who went to Egypt and became prime minister in Egypt. And they thought they'd never see him again, but sure, they had to see him again. And this time they didn't even recognize him. They didn't know it was him. And Joseph played some funny games with them and finally revealed it to them. And oh, how they cried on each other's shoulders. Oh, we missed you. No, we didn't. Oh, we missed you. No, we didn't. And Joseph was so happy to see his brothers. In fact, he forgave them. He forgave them. You know what he told them? He said, what you wanted to do bad, God made it good. And how you wanted to go against me, God made it for me. And look at who I am today. And today I can bless my own family. Where's Dad? Is Dad home? Go call him. You go back and bring Dad back. And he brought his whole family and settled them in Egypt. And they grew and multiplied. And it's an incredible story of how a famine became a feast for the family that God had blessed. Let me stop here. We'll meet tomorrow. So we are working through story after story of God's redemptive plan. And now you've heard the story of Jacob and Joseph. And you may have heard it before, or you're hearing it today for the first time. But God has got a plan. Either way, we're going to go through plan by plan, story by story, name by name, until we get to the snake crusher. And we find out who this son is. With every generation, we'll find two things coming forward: a family, a son. A family, a son. Finally, we'll find the person who will crush the snake and bring victory to those who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Fist bump? Yay! All right, go to class. Have a great time. Bye-bye.
So that was our story for today. It's now time to join your group captains and your friends in your Zoom meetings. Have a great time.